So today I welcome Chris Cummins to the show, someone who I met, I think, in 1998.
Yes.
Uh, and if I'm not mistaken, I think we're at a gala dinner. So we're
It
all
was.
done up.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it was.
it was a long, long time ago now, and we were just discussing off air that I think it's probably about 15, 16 years or more that we actually met each other in person. So this is a nice, enjoyable session. I'm hoping that we're meeting old friends and also getting some good quality content. So that's really good. So even in 1998, I knew that Chris was going places. Uh, and since then, he's worked in a number of key senior leadership roles for organizations such as Takeda and Pfizer. I think most people would have heard of Pfizer, especially with the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. If you
Yeah.
haven't, you need to get out a bit more. And in all these roles, what Chris has really done is focus on creating environments to help his team succeed and exceed. So no surprise then that Chris is now co-owner and MD of the company OTD. So that's his own company. And he's authored a book, The Power Presenter, and he's also an NLP master trainer. Welcome, Chris.
Oh, thank you, thank you, Hakeem.
I didn't miss anything out, did I?
No, you didn't. And man, it's been too long, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, far, far too long. So I think this to me is the beginning, the new beginnings, because we need to connect a lot more often than we have done in the past
Absolutely.
over that last 15, 16 years. So firstly, before we start getting into the nitty gritty of what we're going to talk about, tell me about OTD.
So OTD stands for Our Training Department, and my business partner and I, Andy Crotty, were both at Pfizer. That's where we met each other. And you know, in one way, shape, or form, we both left Pfizer around the same time. And I think we set up on our own separately. And then a big project came up my way, and I contacted him and I said, you know, we were supposed to meet up at some point. I've got a reason. So anyway, 15 years later, the business has grown from just Andy and I kind of running around doing a bit of training here and there to having 100 coaches around the world, or 100 plus coaches around the world, an office in Birmingham, which we can't wait to open again, and lots of customers who've been loyal to us over the 15 years. So it's been a dream, really. It doesn't feel like work.
Excellent. That's well. They always say find your passion, do it, and it's not work. And you can make a lot of money doing it as well, which is an added benefit. So what made you decide to start it? Because obviously you've been in pharma for a long time, very successful. Why would you leave?
Well, do you know what? Interesting enough, Hakeem, when I became a sales manager, after 2 years, I was like, at Takeda, I was top sales manager 2 years in a row. And I remember the boss saying to me after the first year, you know, you got to do it again, Chris, so you know it's not a fluke. And I did. But then I started to think, what do I really want to do years from now? And so I created, and I've still got the file with all the notes in that I typed out in 1998, right, of what I wanted to achieve. And, you know, year by year, well, you know, what I want to do in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And that's basically OTD came about 8 years into my 10-year plan.
Okay.
So in my mind, I'd already created the business, you know, back in 1998. So it was a plan to set the business up anyway. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does, definitely. So what was it about training then? Because I mean, it's an interesting point. I have this conversation with lots of people, you know, because you get managers or leaders, probably managers rather than leaders, but managers who go into it and they go into it for kudos, they go in for money. And my argument always is to people, if you go into it for anything other than you like developing people, you're probably in the wrong job, actually. So from your point of view, what was it about the training that was your plan that you wanted to do beyond the pharmaceutical market?
I'll tell you what it was. When I was always curious about the people that I was working with, so the team members, and I was, you know, it's a bit like, I don't know, being a bit parochial, football management.
Yeah.
You know, how can I get the best out of these players? How can I get them to win the league or whatever? So that's what it was like with my sales team. And then with the managers that I managed as well. And I always used to think, almost like an amateur psychologist, why is it that some people, two people, for example, can have the same background, same CV, almost be like one person, and one person is at the top of the charts, and the other one isn't.
Yeah.
What is it? What's the difference that makes the difference? And that was really what got me really curious about setting up a business where I could work with any people that really wanted to improve. So that's how the training part got kind of inside me. If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and it's a perfect segue, almost as if we planned it. You know, the topic for today's discussion is what does it take to stand out, which is obviously what you were just talking about there in terms of the two identical people. So, first question: what do you mean by standing out?
Well, you know, before I answer that question, I kind of want to flip it back to you, Hakeem. And when you think of that phrase "stand out," what does it mean for you?
I think, yeah, for me, it is almost exactly what you just described there. What is it that makes, and I can't help but use it for football analogy, but what is it that makes a Cristiano Ronaldo as opposed to, I don't know, a Danny Ings? For those of you for those of you who don't know football, you're probably thinking, what's he talking about? But basically, what's the difference between a world-class player and a bang average player? Because actually, and I have this conversation with my son all the time, because no one's born being a world-class footballer. You know, generally you're born with the same sort of attributes, and it's looking at, well, so how does that person go from being bang average to being at the very, very top of their game, and that whereby wherever you go, Cristiano Ronaldo being a perfect case in point, it doesn't matter which club he goes to, he is the standout player at that club. So that's what it is to me. It's what is leading to excellence? Why is excellence derived by certain people over and over again wherever they go, and other people struggle?
And what they've done is they've turned it into a discipline. And I'm not talking about kind of army discipline or anything like that. I'm talking about mental discipline. Now, do you remember the 1992 Barcelona Olympics when Linford Christie was in the final, right?
Yeah.
And now I did athletics at a reasonably high level. In fact, I trained at the Linford Christie Stadium when he was not even that good, right? So you know, and what I remember of that day, I thought he's going to win this. And if you ever, I would recommend anyone go on YouTube, type in 1992 Olympics final, Linford Christie, and you just watch this guy, right? He stood up. Now, you know what it's like in sprints, even if it's the dad's race on sports day. I don't know if they still do that, but you know what? You can see it. People are prowling around. 100 meters is a blue ribbon event, isn't it? And you can see everyone's trying to manage their emotions, and they're walking around and prowling. And Linford's just standing there, and he's actually running the race. You can see him running the race, you know, and then he gets in, and for the first time ever, he gets a good start, and that's it. I mean, he cleans them. You know, you watch the race; it's only 9 point whatever seconds, and it's well worth watching, because for me, that's a great example of standing out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense, because you're standing out metaphorically,
Yes.
as well as actually, in terms of the fact he's won the race, and what you said there about the discipline is a really key point, but an interesting one from my point of view, because I've spent however long it is trying to, not me personally stand out, but make sales and marketing stand out. Because there's so many times that I sit in boardrooms, sit in meetings, and people talk about finance, and everyone leaves the finance people to talk about it.
Yeah.
Talk about engineering talk about it. As soon as you open your mouth about sales and marketing, everybody's in there, as if it's just like, oh well, you don't need to have any skill. There's no discipline. There's no real effort. There's no focus. Whereas what I've tried to do, and I can't say I've achieved it, it's still a quest. But what I've tried to do is make that stand out. And I think that's been responsible for successful teams that I've managed, because I've focused on what is it that makes the difference.
Great. And I kind of think that's what we're going to focus on. Now, Linford Christie doesn't know anything about sales, right? And actually, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are. Let's try some things, shall we? Because, this is about managing your state. And I'll explain what state is in a moment. But let's just try something. Let's just do a thought experiment, Hakeem, okay? So all I want you to do is, everybody has good days and everyone has bad days, right? unless I don't know, unless it's rainbows and unicorn time. So we all have good days, right? So I'm sure you've had a great day that you can remember right now, and you think, yeah, great. So what I want you to do, is I want you to just visualize or picture that day right now. I just want you to get an image of that day, perfect. And as you look at it, is it a movie or is it kind of a still picture as you're looking at this image right now?
A movie.
Okay, great. And is it in color of black and white?
Black and white.
And is it bright or is it dim?
Bright.
Okay, great. And now, so when you look at that movie, right, what are the sounds that are going on around? You know, what's the internal dialogue? What's going on? What are you saying to yourself? Or what are the sounds around you? The
sounds are crowds, crowds and cheering. I don't know whether that's because I'm a failed footballer, but tumultuous crowds and cheering is what I'm hearing.
Fantastic. And as you hear that sound of the cheering, what's it doing for your feelings?
Oh, I'm motivated.
Right. Okay. Good. And how does it actually physically feel?
Uplifting. Actually, my chest is feeling puffed out.
Right.
I'm feeling elevated.
Beautiful. Great. Hold that thought. Let's just park it for a second. Right now, we all have bad days as well. Right now, this doesn't need to turn into a depression session by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, even things like when you can't find your keys. Yeah. Right. So I just want you to think of one of those situations.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Good. We don't need to go into the content too much, but all I want you to notice is it a movie or a slide?
It's a slide, actually, I think.
Okay, good. And as you look at that, what's the kind of sounds that are going on inside your head, or just going on in general?
To be honest, it's quite silent.
Okay. All right. So bring it a bit closer. And what do you end up saying to yourself as you think about the situation right now?
It's very much one of not really worth it.
Great, lovely. So that's the. You can see already when you watch the recording of this. And then when you think, how does that kind of make you feel?
Yeah, you feel slumped in your chair, losing energy. Just want to sit on a sofa and probably eat some crisps.
Great. Okay, this is perfect. Okay, and okay, go back to the other one now, just for a moment. Go back to the cheering.
I like that one.
Yeah, that's much better. But so we can establish then that when you have a good day or a bad day, you have a different emotional state, right? So then if you think about Linford Christie, you think about people, you think about salespeople who are doing really, really well, what happens is they are in a great state emotionally. And the state is what's known as the total and ongoing conditions from which we're acting. And so people who are, stand out, are very good at managing their states on a general basis. So does that make sense?
Let me throw something at you, actually, because I heard a guy talk about this quite some time ago, and I've used it because I love it. And I think it's similar to what you're saying, because he said, one of these keynote speaks, and he said that the main difference between successful salespeople, who's talking about specifically, and non-successful ones, is exactly at the state. And the example he gave is, he said, look, not exactly 100% right, but he said everyone starts their day at level 10 motivation wise. Yeah. So you both go into a call, you have a bad call, you come out at motivation level 6. He said and the poor rep, or the poor performing rep, then goes into the next call at motivation level 6. So obviously it's not going to be that great because you're already at motivation level 6. You then go into the next one and it spirals out of control. He said that the successful person comes out of motivation level 6, but between that call and the next call, they get themselves back up to motivation level 6, so that they then get back in there with the energy and etc. So I've never really, I use it all the time because it makes sense to me, but I've never actually spoke to an NLP practitioner to see whether that whether it's true or I've just been lying to people for 20 years.
And that's exactly right. And that's what state is all about. Now, here's the thing. When you are having a good day, are you inside your head or are you outside your head?
Now, what do you mean, just before I answer that question?
Or let's flip it the other way round, right? When you're having a bad day, Are you more withdrawn and kind of focused more on yourself, or are you more focused on the outer world and what you're giving?
Yeah, no, definitely the former. You're more focused on yourself, internal. You got internal conversations going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess that manifests itself in many ways. So think about it. Sometimes if you're completely internally focused and you're getting too much information, or you're paying attention to too much information, then you become overwhelmed, don't you?
Yeah.
Right. And then you get that horrible feeling of overwhelmed, right? Or the other way around, if you're kind of, I don't know, you haven't got enough detail, then what ends up happening is you categorize things and you stereotype and you make prejudices, don't you? You put things or situations in boxes, right? And again, that's all internal. But when you're paying attention on the outside and you're giving on the outside, that's when you're in a much better state.
Correct.
Right. So that's the kind of thing that people who are more successful, they tend to be more on the outside than they are on the inside, more regularly. But also, they know when to do both. Right?
That was the question I was just about to ask, actually, because what you're effectively saying is that the management of state is what those successful standout people have in common.
Yeah.
And the question I was about to ask was, okay, so can you manage that? Yeah. Can you learn that? Is that something that you can improve upon? How do you do that? How do you learn?
So actually, the exercise that I just did with you is a very simple thing to do. Most people don't even pay attention to that at all. So as soon as you start to become conscious of it, the easier it then becomes to actually be able to almost reverse engineer the bad state. And it's not even a bad state. None of these states are bad, right? Because actually, sometimes a bad day is a great time to decompress.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you can't be like this all the time, right? So you have to decompress. I mean, put it this way, after running a Zoom session in the evening and you need to go to sleep, you kind of need to change your state, don't you? Otherwise, it's not going to be that good. But yeah, so I guess the thing is, it's about how you think on purpose that makes a difference.
Yeah, no, that's very useful, because I mean that's the sweet spot, isn't it? It's about understanding what makes the difference, what makes you stand out. That's what they have in common. And so, what kind of results would those standout people typically get then?
Well, so think about it for a moment, right? There's a difference. It's funny. I was watching yesterday an Oxford debate, right? It was all to do with, what the hell was it? It was to do with institutional racism. We don't need to go down that route, right? But anyway, let's not go there. But anyway, I was watching the debate and I saw one of the students, she was using notes the whole time, right? And so for me, she was kind of outside of herself, looking in, while she was doing this, because she was so worried about what she was saying to the audience that she wasn't actually focused on the audience. Does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense, yeah.
Whereas the next guy that came on, and he was also part of her debate, so he was on her side, he had a lived experience of what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And he was just telling story after story, and you could see everybody, even the guys on the other side, leaning forward, because he was totally focused on what he was telling the audience. He was completely outside of himself.
Yeah.
So almost like he's in a trance while he's doing it. He's not even thinking, it's just coming out. He's in the flow or in the groove, as the musicians would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're the kind of results you get. And when we're doing the power presenter training, for example, we can tell when people first start, you can see it's all internal dialogue. You can actually see it when you're watching them, when they're nervous, and it all matches their physiology, everything. When you do the first video, which we do very early on in the training. And then the second one, by the time we've gone through the training with them, we've given them some coaching and given them some feedback, then now you can see they're breathing properly, and now they're focused on the audience. And they're not worried about their message anymore. The message is just going to come, because they know it's going to be the connection between them and the audience that's going to make the difference. And so you can see it very quickly, Hakeem.
It's interesting actually, isn't it? Because obviously, from a sales point of view, presenting is the key thing. And I try. You talked about stereotypes, and I try not to stereotype. But when I'm interviewing somebody and they're presenting,
Yeah.
and they've got notes, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I can't. If you actually can't present your ideas, because generally when I get someone to present, I try to get them to present on something they know.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Notes, and I'm thinking, if you can't present on something that you actually know without notes, how are you going to engage?
Absolutely.
On a product or a service or whatever it may be, and it is about that, as you said, being outside yourself and actually having that connection and understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve through a presentation, rather than no, I've also got some slides here. I need to get the information across. Because if that's what you want to do, I can just give you the presentation.
Exactly. You can just send it to them and let them read it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that goes for even when you're in a call. Right? Because some people get driven by the sales aid, and then some people don't use the sales aid at all. And so putting that aside for a second, what kind of state do you think people need to be in to ask great questions of a customer?
Well, they need to. Well, first you need to be in the first state I was in. So you need to be in that heightened state, state, but then also aware of who you're speaking to, and what the context of that conversation is.
Absolutely.
And also, more importantly, I think, what it is that the person you're imparting the knowledge to wants to know.
Exactly.
As opposed to me saying, no, I've got to get these 5 key messages across. Whatever the conversation is, bang, 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 because that's what I was told in the training course. I've got to get it done.
Exactly. So you need to be in a state of curiosity, don't you? You kind of need to show interest in the person.
Yeah.
And so then it's not about thinking, oh, I need to ask open questions or closed questions. The questions emerge because you're interested in the person who's sitting in front of you. And that's the key thing. So then you don't have to worry about the questions because they should emerge.
Well, it's interesting. And one of my old bosses a long time ago described it as a thirst for knowledge.
Yeah.
He said, when I recruit people who've got thirst for knowledge. If you've got thirst for knowledge, everything flows. Because just as you're saying, from a customer point of view, you want to know about them, so you engage in a conversation. I have this conversation all the time when you talk about sales. He's saying, when you're asking somebody about a holiday, are you actually in your mind thinking, now I've got to ask a closed question, now I've got to ask an open question? You're just having a conversation.
That's right.
I said, so if that's the way you look at it, and then I talk about a similar thing, but in terms of what keeps your customer awake at night.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing, because if you understand what makes them tick, what they're in business to do, whether you're there or not, the questions, as you said, just flow, because you're interested in them and interested in what they're doing and what's their work, what is it that they're measured on, how are they going to be, what is it that you can do to support them, as opposed to, as you said, most people are going in and they're focused on, get the detail laid out, get through it, 5 key things, done it, right, I'm out, I've done my job.
Exactly.
Okay, so on that then, so what do you think is the key to obtaining amazing results just in life in general, and therefore leading to being a standout?
It's really funny because I'm going to kind of contradict myself, right, in a second, right? So one thing is good planning, right? Now, and when I say that, I'm talking about having well-formed outcomes, and there are 4 conditions for having well-formed outcomes, all right? So the first thing is that it's stated in the positive. So in other words, if you ask yourself, what do I want? It needs to be what do I want, not what I don't want.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to miss my sales target, or your brain is already focused on miss sales target, right? So that's one thing, all right? Because it's amazing how powerful your brain actually is. And then the other thing is it needs to be your goal or your outcome. In the old days when we could have human contact, people very often used to come around my house, or they'd say, oh, my husband can you help stop my husband from smoking? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, does he want to stop smoking? And they'd be like, well, no, but I can't stand his breath. And I'm like, well, that's great. But the only problem is if he doesn't want to stop smoking, it's going to be really hard. So it needs to be his goal. When he's ready, then you call me and we can do something. Right. So that's one thing. It needs to be their outcome. And now the thing is, you might go, yeah, but I'm a salesperson and I'm given the sales target. Great. But what could achieving the sales target do for you?
Yeah.
And that's the key thing you need to focus on. And then it becomes your goal,
Yeah.
right? And then the other thing is, it kind of, just like we just did that little experiment with our good and bad day, you need to be able to have it sensory based. So you kind of need to have a picture of it in your mind. You need to have the words in your head, you know, the right dialogue, and you need to have a good feeling. In fact, I'll tell you a little secret, Hakim. For the past 30 years, I write down what I want to achieve, all different areas of my life on different cards, right? And I write it like it's already happened.
Yeah.
So it tricks my unconscious mind, because my conscious mind is going to go, well, you can't get it. But my unconscious mind, just like I said, you know, what you don't want, it's already focused on it. It's kind of going, okay, I'll find a way of doing it. And I read probably 30 of those every day, twice a day, right? And all of a sudden you're creating neural pathways in your mind. Now it's great. All the kind of neuroscience is catching up with all the stuff from before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it creates, and it's great because things happen for you and it gets achieved, right? So that's great. So that's important to be able to make sure it's sensory. And the final thing is, it's kind of, they call it ecological. So in other words, by achieving this outcome, what's it going to do for your immediate friends, your family, you know, your work colleagues? You know, you're going to step on your work colleagues by achieving this outcome. Probably not ecological.
Yeah.
Right? You know, so it kind of needs to be holistic, if you will. All right. And so that's really important. But then at the same time, disappointment requires adequate planning.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, you know, sometimes you can get this picture in your mind so firm that when it doesn't happen exactly as you wanted it, you may end up missing an opportunity. I mean, I don't know how many times people have been on blind dates and they got the picture of this person, or even the picture on their screen, you know, if they do the internet dating.
Yeah.
They turn up and meet for a meal, and you're like, oh, right? So, I mean, I'm way past that kind of stuff, but, you know, I just want to give the analogy, you know, and maybe that person's a nice person, but because the picture didn't fit exactly,
Yeah,
you decide, no, not for me, you know. So that's what I'm saying, you know, build a little bit of disappointment in there somewhere, you know. Don't be flexible enough with your outcome, you know.
so yeah, it's about being able to reframe, for example. Yeah, so
absolutely.
that, you know, that didn't happen. Okay, so that's what can I take out of that, and then what's the next thing that needs to be done? And you need, and you're right, you need to be aware that not everything is going to be successful. And it's interesting because I'm not going to get into the millennials are like X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But I do tend to see that some of the younger, certainly of my kids, it's almost like they expect to have absolutely zero disappointment.
Yeah.
And everything's always going to go well because that's the way it should be. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't. And again, you know, the challenge then is that they're focused their attention on the inside rather than on the outside.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. And then it's about how can I manage my state of disappointment? I need to step slowly into a different state so I can be more resourceful.
Yeah.
I mean, the challenge with all of these states is if you're in a state which is a decompression state, when you need to be in a more elevated uptime type state, then the challenge is you cannot make good decisions. I mean, if you think about it, if you're having a bad day and you're asked to make a major decision, have you ever made a really good decision when you're having a bad day? You need to be in a good state in order to make good decisions. And that's a rule of thumb. Good state, or should I say resourceful state, good decisions. Unresourceful state, not so good decisions, maybe bad decisions.
It is, because I remember I almost had an epiphany. And it's probably, and I remember it was about, I was living in Nottingham at the time.
Yeah.
Something really bad had happened. Well, I'd made a mistake in a work environment. I was panicking about it. I thought, oh God, this is a disaster. And I thought, all right, well, there's nothing I can do about it today. I'm going to sort out tomorrow. And when I woke up, I just felt completely different. And I had all the ideas, and I thought, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And from that day on, I thought, actually, anytime I'm in this sort of like the frame of mind I was in yesterday, I'm just going to walk away from it. I'm not making any decision. Because had I made the decisions yesterday, it'd have been an absolute disaster because I was in
Yeah.
the worst emotional state. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get sacked. This is disaster. The morning I woke up, I was like, I don't know, I've no idea what that 8 hours did for me, but I just woke up, I was energized. I'm thinking, right, I'm going to do this, I need to do that, I'll speak to my boss. And ever since then, that's always been my methodology, that actually, whenever I get into that state, I think I'm quite good at getting out of that state, but even so, I still leave it for the day and think, wait till tomorrow and then do it tomorrow. Because what's the worst that can happen in 24 hours? Not really.
Absolutely.
Much, to be honest.
And actually, maybe that's your strategy, you know, from going from kind of an unresourceful state to going into a good state. Maybe part of the strategy is actually to sleep on it, get a good night's sleep, you know, because again, your prefrontal cortex, if you don't have enough sleep, you end up being a lot less resilient, you become much more stressed, and your decision making goes out of the window. That's how people end up getting, you know, when they're being interrogated. That's why they give sleep deprivation, because all of a sudden your prefrontal cortex, which is the rational thinking part of your brain, has gone.
And it's interesting because I always love having these sort of conversations, because those sort of things change over time. And when we were probably younger, Margaret Thatcher, everyone took 5 hours sleep. Oh, fantastic! And it was like the 80s were all about, you know, how little sleep can you do, can you have, and how much work can you do? And you think, is that really? That's not really the right thing to be doing, because you're not as productive when you're functioning like that. But that was almost like a badge of honor. Oh, I have 3 hours sleep a night.
Yeah, I know. And the funny thing is now, I don't know about you, but I got me these Apple Watches, and they kind of reminded me of my health in every aspect. Oh, right, you've only had 7 hours sleep. That's lower than the national average of people of your age. You know, if you don't have Alzheimer's, you know, and it's like your watch is telling you all this stuff. You're like, what? So you kind of you can't help it. It just, you know.
To be honest, I've turned my watch. I don't wear, because I used to wear it to bed.
Yeah.
And it gives me stress, because it says you've had 5 hours of this, 2 hours of that. 1 hour of light, and I'm looking and thinking, oh, I haven't had enough REM sleep here. Oh, I need, so I stopped wearing it.
Well, the funny thing is, because I used to travel so much, I tried to make sure I had at least 6 hours.
Okay, yeah.
You know, somehow, you know, so that's why I monitor it. So, but it's great now. I'm getting like 7, 8 hours sleep.
Oh no, exactly that. In fact, my wife said to me literally yesterday, you seem to be going to bed later than you normally. Because since I was about 16, take out the university years, but since I was about 16, I always go to bed about 10:30.
Yeah.
Because I've done what I need to do. I'm not really a big TV watcher, so I'm like, well, I might as well go to bed. And I always feel fresh. And she said it to me yesterday. I said, I said, that's because I'm getting up later. I said, because I'm not going
anywhere
to get prepared to get in the car or to get in an airplane. So I said, I've got much more time than I used to have. So I'm not
absolutely,
but I'm still getting exactly the same amount of sleep, because I am one of those people. If I don't have 8 hours sleep, I can do with less, but I function much better, and I can sense the difference. That when I'm on 8 hours sleep, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
And I always say that to people. And people go, oh, well, you sleep too much. I said, well, I think I sleep just enough, actually. It keeps me going, and I'm not sending emails at 11 o'clock at night, which I see lots of other people doing, managing their time. So one of my biggest bugbears in life is it's not procrastination. It's like people who aren't complete finishers. They start something, they leave it. They start something else, they leave it, and on and on and on. And you're thinking, well, aren't you going to finish?
Yeah.
You know, how can they get results and change things so they can stand out and get lasting results?
Well, you know, this is really interesting, because what happens is a lot of people don't play the movie right to the end. Right?
Yeah.
So you know, people go and visualize and all that kind of stuff. That's great. And, you know, I think it's really important. And otherwise I wouldn't have mentioned Linford Christie, you know, doing what he did. The challenge is, what are you visualizing? Right? And sometimes I think some people don't even have a movie when it comes to the task that they need to achieve. It may be just a picture, and then they start doing stuff. And actually what they need to do is play the whole movie right through to the end and actually see themselves achieving it. I mean, I do this with my kids, because I'm saying to them, look, okay, let's play this movie. Right, you've got this cup of water, and you've rested it right on the edge of what do you think is going to happen? What could happen? let's play the movie to the end. Oh, okay, Dad. And then they move it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and I'm making it simplistic. The reality is people just don't do that.
Yeah.
Or the other thing they don't do is they don't, in the movie that they're playing, they don't put hurdles in, right? So they need to be able to see themselves managing these some challenges that are coming their way, and they're like either dodging them or going over them or getting around them or punching through them.
Yeah.
But they need to be able to do that, because otherwise what happens is they played the movie to the end, but the challenge is then they haven't put any hurdles in. So as soon as the first hurdle comes, it's like a brick wall.
Yeah. I think that is. I seem to spend 95% of my time being like a doomsayer, because I'm quite fortunate. I've got very motivated people who work for me, and I'm always saying, but what if that doesn't go like that? And what if that doesn't happen? What are you going to do? In fact, I read a book, and I can't believe I'm about to mention it. It's Joey Barton. I read his book. I was on the plane going somewhere, and actually, he appears like to be quite a thug. But I've listened to him a few times on programs. Actually, he's quite an intelligent guy.
He's intelligent, yeah.
And I was reading the book, and it really resonated, because he said, you know, it's not about having plan A and plan B. He said there's 26 letters in the alphabet. He said, so you should be having all the way. And I thought that really resonated, because I feel that as I've become a leader, that's become my job, is actually saying to people, well, hang on, yeah, that's great, and that's what we want to achieve. And if it all goes smoothly, that's brilliant. But what happens if it doesn't?
Yeah, that's right.
What could go wrong? And if those things go wrong, what's your contingency? What's your plan in that situation? So yeah, I think you're right. People give up at that very first hurdle because they've not expected it. And when it happens, oh, it's a disaster. And you're like, no. This is what we paid for.
Exactly.
This is when we get going. You know, when things happen, we're paid to solve problems. Otherwise, what's the point of us?
And you know, thinking about it, a lot of these things are, you know, we have a lot of filters in our brain, right? And these filters, a lot of them are fear-based, right? So again, this is why I'm talking about paying attention on the outside or the inside. So, you know, when you're doing this, a lot of these are kind of fear-based. So you end up kind of either playing the bad movie over again. So, you know, I tried this before, it didn't work. Play that movie, and then the first hurdle that comes along that looks like the same one, it's like, okay, let's just give up. So all of this is going on at high speed inside our heads a lot. Yeah. So it's about making and taking little rewards as you go along. You know, as you achieve things, just okay, great, we're moving forward, we're still going forward, great. You know, people a lot of people don't do that.
Okay, so I mean, you've been very successful, and we're talking about challenges and those obstacles. So what are the 3 biggest mistakes that you've made in your quest to stand out, and what did you learn from those?
I can tell you what, I got promoted from being a sales manager to national sales manager, and I stopped doing all the things that I did when I was good as a sales manager. That was a mistake, because then basically, I ended up quite stressed out, not in a good place, making a lot of bad decisions, bad state. You know, I mean, I learned a lot from doing all of that, and but at the same time, that was not good. And I kind of, if only I just carried on doing what I was doing and being hungry to get to where I got to that, I kind of felt like, oh, I've arrived now. You know, second line manager. You know, in all these important meetings all the time. And actually what I should have been doing is keeping the sales managers motivated, coaching them, doing all the things that I was doing with all the other people, being outside rather than inside in my own head. You know? So I guess that was one thing. Also, I've been married twice. My first marriage lasted 1 year.
Oh, blimey.
Even my mum, who's devoutly religious, kind of said to me, sure you really need to get married in this situation. But anyway, that was a bad decision. And again, I didn't play the movie to the end.
Yeah.
That cost me a lot of emotion and a lot of money. Anyway, so just unburdening my soul. And I guess for a third one, maybe going home and still thinking about work. Right now, I've kind of stopped doing that now. in the early days, probably when I first started, when I was working at Pfizer, I used to do that a lot, and it was exhausting.
Yeah.
Exhausted. Still thinking about what's happening for the next day. I wasn't decompressing.
It's a very interesting. I was very, very fortunate because my first regional manager, a lovely lady called Ollie, and most people in the pharmaceutical industry know her, but she's still working and she's a national sales manager now. And she was my very first manager, and I was put on a management development program, so she was supporting me. And when I got the job as a first line manager, the first thing she said to me is, Hakeem, do not take your work home with you. She said, always have a cut-off point. She said, and make sure your sales team know you've got a cut-off point, and do nothing after. She said, whether it's 6, whether it's 7, do not think about work after that. And I always say it to people, and people keep saying, no, you can't do that. And I said, no, I've done it since I was 28. I said, and I've rigidly stuck to it. And I said, and that has helped me through a lot of time, because when there's pressure on at work, if you then take it home, and you've got no sanctuary, as you said, yeah, it's a killer. It's an absolute killer.
Andy and I used to say, but between us, when we started off the business, we'd say to this room full of managers, we've between us, we've probably got about 45 years worth of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, and nobody died when they worked for us. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I kind of think that's how you we don't work in a life or death situation, do we? In our roles.
No.
I know other people do. Maybe the medicines that they're buying from us, that the end users, the doctors, they may be in that situation, but we're not. And I kind of think I wish I'd learned that a little bit earlier. Just to switch off, come in, watch the TV, read. Netflix is great.
Yeah,
now, my wife and I now get addicted, and then we start going, it's 11 o'clock, should we watch one more? Oh,
yeah. That's what's ruined my sleep. An absolute killer. The old days, you had to wait a week.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Whereas now it's like, I could just get one more. Oh, it's 45 minutes. Oh, go on then.
Oh, yeah. So even now they've even got the box set, haven't they? On BBC iPlayer or all these different, different things. So it's terrible. Anyway, there you go. But it's
all right.
So
on the flip side, then, what are the 3 most important things that have allowed you to achieve what you've achieved?
Probably one of the important things, I guess, in terms from a business perspective, is learning to let go. I think, and when I say let go, I kind of think let go of bad memories that you've had when things haven't worked, and trust the person who's in front of you.
Good advice. Very good advice.
Because, you think, no, it didn't. Last time we tried this with Fred, it didn't work. Well, this isn't Fred.
Yeah.
So give the person a chance. So that for me is one of the important things. And then going back to the good decisions and the bad decisions, I've learned to do kind of what you do, Hakeem. I do my best. If I see these emails coming in and I'm not feeling great, then I'm not going to answer them. I might go and I'll just go and step into a more resourceful state.
Yeah.
And I'll go for a walk. Just go for a walk for half an hour, brisk walk, and then come back and notice the difference. And then I can answer them. So that's another thing that I think I tend to do in terms of importance. And I guess the other thing is understand why you're doing what you're doing. So what I didn't tell you is that when and I don't know whether you noticed this or not, Hakeem, but what I've noticed is that there's not many male people of colour, like me or you, in the leadership teams in any business.
I may well have noticed that.
I thought it was just me, right? And so, one of the things I kind of put as one of the things in my life is how can I kind of help? Apart from I've got 5 children, right? So apart from kind of bringing them through, you know, how can I help? What can I do to do that? And I thought just by being an example, it would work. But actually, it doesn't.
No.
And so it's, what can I do to kind of find someone who looks like me, who's 30 years younger, and help them? So that for me is an important thing, because from what I can see, I get on the planes, most of the time I turn left and it's just me.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
And sometimes I get told, oh, no, economy's that way. And I kind of think, if there was more of us going that way, then people would go, oh, no, economy's that way.
Yeah, no, it's the age-old challenge, isn't it? Because it's interesting because it almost circles back to what we're talking about having a goal, a movie, but also understand there's going to be hurdles in your way.
Exactly.
Because I think lots of people who look like us think, well, actually, I want to get the same chance as everyone else. And as soon as the hurdle, it's like, oh, well, I can't get it. And my view has always been, well, there's a hurdle there. And if the hurdle's the company, I'm going to another company. If the hurdle's the person, etc., exactly the point. As opposed to saying, oh, I'll give up then because I'm just not going to get anywhere. And my view has always been, no, there's no reason why I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find a way to do it. It might not be the traditional way. It might not be what everyone else does. But I know, as you just said, what I want to achieve, and I'm going to achieve it. Whether it's traditional, whether it's not, it doesn't matter. And I think you're right. Because similar to yourself, I've always thought, oh yeah, as long as people see people in positions, then it's all right.
Yeah.
I don't think that's enough.
No.
I just don't think it's enough. So yeah, that's a one that certainly resonates with myself as well, and it's especially pharma specifically is an interesting one. And I've had this conversation with many people because not necessarily blacks, but if you look at ethnic minorities in sales teams in pharma, I'd say there's about probably 70 or 80%. In lots of companies, you looked at first line management, you might have dropped down to about 20. Yeah. You go above that. If you've got 10%, you've got about 5%. And if you go to like CEO type level, absolutely no chance. Maybe one, across and across the big companies, hardly any.
Well, the thing is, I don't know about you, but when I do work in America, every so often, I might find one black senior manager.
Yeah.
And two of us are like, hello! And I kind of in my mind, I've seen the journey they've probably been on, and I know what it's like, and I think, what can we do more to kind of help? And so, as part of our business, that's what we've started doing.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
And it's kind of working. You can see some very helpful, grateful young people who are keen. So long may that continue as well. So,
no, certainly. I think giving something back. I've tried it a few times, and I probably have to expand out because I've tried it with relatives.
Yeah.
My advice is never, ever, ever do it with relatives because I've done it with probably about 3 or 4 nephews, nieces that I've got brought in, and the problem is they just say, "Oh, it's Uncle Hakeem."
Yeah, I know.
And you're thinking, no, it's Uncle Hakeem, but it's Uncle Hakeem's business. I don't want you to ruin my business, But yeah, I think going outside that for people who aren't given the opportunities and given the opportunities, I think is a very laudable objective. It's probably something I need to start doing actually more of as well.
It's rewarding for the business as well because I think, as they say, and I think there's a Harvard Business Review article on this, which basically says the more diverse your company, the better you get. So why not do it? And I think that goes back to comfort zones, being in your own state, and state you can have a group state, and actually then it becomes harder to make the different types of decisions that you need to make to create a more diverse, if you want to use that phrase, organisation.
Yeah, no, I think definitely the more diversity is good, not just for the sake of being more diversity, but actually from a business process, from a business decision making viewpoint, it amplifies and helps that process, and I think accelerates the business much more rapidly than just having 15 or 100 people or 200 people all the same, think the same. I don't think those businesses thrive in the long term, really. All right. So what is the question that you weren't asked before, but you'd love to answer?
Well, it's really interesting because this is kind of a generic question, I think, when you think about this. Because for me, this is a question that nobody asks each other enough and mean it. And that is, how are you?
Yeah.
You know, how many times do people say, how are you? And they don't even wait for the answer. They're gone.
Well, interestingly, I used to do a little experiment because I noticed this very early on. I can't remember when it was. It might have been at university or when I first started work. When people used to say, how are you? It didn't matter how I felt. I'd say, I'm not feeling that well, actually. Yeah. And not one person ever said, oh, really? What's this? I'm thinking, hang on, I've just told you've asked me how I am. I said I'm not well. And you just said, oh, great. And you walked off. And that happened all the time. And you're thinking, that's a bit weird. So you're not really interested in how I am. It's just a thing you say.
Yeah. And I think now, especially now, when we're going through what we're going through, I went to see, so one of my daughters, I have a daughter and she is 26 in May, and she's 8 months pregnant. So I went to see her today, her and her boyfriend, the two of them, and sat in the garden, obviously with my mask on. But I went to see her and we had a good chat, and I said, I just want to know, don't try and motivate me. Tell me how you're feeling, right? And so we had a really good chat, and I kind of think that's an important thing.
And again, it's nice because I think things have changed.
Yeah.
Whereby people ask that question now and genuinely are interested in the answer and are looking to help other people. Because the lockdown, it's actually been a real lesson in resilience. Yes. And actually knowing how resilient people are, because there's lots of people I've worked with or friends of mine who you think, oh, they're super robust. And after about 2 weeks of lockdown, they said, I can't stand it, Hakeem. I've got to get out. And I'm sitting there thinking, what's the matter with him?
Yeah.
But you see it, and I've even seen it with my kids. My daughter is like probably one of the most bouncy people, upbeat people that you're ever going to meet. But literally, just before we went back to school, probably like a month before, she's having like outbursts all the time. I'm thinking, what's the bloody hell matter with her?
Yeah.
It's because she's a gregarious person. She likes to be out and she likes to meet with her friends.
Yeah.
And for me, I like it as well, but I'm quite resilient. I could probably hibernate for like 6 months and be all right. She can't. She needs to see people. She needs to be talking to people. So, and I'm thinking, actually, I really assumed that she's going to be fine because she's just got a really robust character, but actually, she's not. And you have to have strategies and coping mechanisms to say, well, how do you then work with her so that I know when she's not right and I can help her rather than just assuming, oh, she'll be fine.
Yeah, that's right. And this is that kind of introvert, extrovert thing as well, isn't it? And actually, the school, I mean, we've got 4 children at home. So you can imagine when it was homeschooling time.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So they were just as glad as we were to get back to school. So,
well, I don't think it's natural. That's what I keep saying to myself. I think it's not natural to spend all your time with your kids 24 hours a day, in the same space. I kept saying, get out in the garden, and they come in and saying, yeah, I've been in the garden for the past hour. And I want to come inside, and you're thinking, I don't want you inside because we've been schooling you all day. I just want some me time. So it's an interesting one. So I've got a couple of quick fire questions.
Go. That's great.
So, best advice you've ever been given?
Best advice really has been kind of stop focusing on myself and focus on other people and focus on helping people.
Yeah, no.
That was some good advice.
Good. Worst advice you've ever been given?
Don't ever do training.
So, are you still in contact with that person?
Yeah, you know him as well, but I'm not going to say who it is.
I think I know who it might be.
He's a Liverpool season ticket holder. That's all.
Yes. Yeah, well, he was never a fan of training. He's not. I don't think he's ever been a fan of what they'd call soft skills, has he?
No. But it was a good laugh, though. Anyway.
Oh no. In fact, that same individual is the person that made me step up my presentation game. And I do tell this story because a company was bought and he was given a presentation. We were doing like road shows in different.
Yeah.
So he gave a presentation, and I remember sitting there thinking, brilliant presentation. I wish I could present like him. And he's like pausing, and he said, "Oh, and I can't remember." And we went to such and such.
Yeah.
Then the next day, he did a presentation. Someone else, exactly the same.
Yeah.
Exactly same pauses. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, he can't have forgotten from yesterday. So he'd rehearsed it so well.
Yeah.
It just looked so natural. From that day on, my mum used to, because I was living at home at that time, and I remember conference presentations, I'd be videoing myself, I'd be preparing for weeks in advance, so that by the time you got on stage, as you said right at the beginning, I wasn't thinking about what I just knew what to say. I was thinking about what is it I want to convey to those guys?
Absolutely.
How do I want them to feel when I come off stage, as opposed to what am I going to say? And then if you make a mistake, I remember thinking, no one knows apart from me.
No one knows apart from
Nobody
you.
knows. I know where I'm going, and I'm going with it.
And also, if you've got rapport with the audience, anyway, if you make a mistake, they don't mind. So when you haven't got rapport with the audience and you're internal and you're thinking about yourself, then they're all like,
yeah, no, exactly.
So that's the difference.
That was the best lesson I ever learned, watching him on two consecutive days, thinking, bloody hell. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So last one, what would you like to be remembered for?
That's really interesting, because if you can see what my thing says here, it says creating lasting change across the world through innovation and inspiration. So that's kind of our strapline, if you will. That's kind of what we really want to do as a business. But that's how I would like to be remembered as well, even if it's just with my family.
Well, that's as good a place to start. But I think, as you were saying before, if that's the ambition, and you understand how to get there, and you're making sure that you're writing notes, etc., the chances are you get there.
Yeah.
It's the people who don't have a plan or haven't thought about what they want to be, what they want to achieve, or what they want to be remembered for. Because I think, and I have this conversation all the time with people, you're not going to be on your deathbed saying, if only I've been in the office 1 hour later. And I think about that a lot. About, okay, so when I'm on that deathbed, are people going to be there thinking, oh yeah, Akeem helped me do this, or help? Because I think human nature is you want to be remembered for helping, and you want to help, whatever that help is, and whether it's your family, whether it's a great. If you're in a position that we are, that we have the opportunity to touch lots of people, that's always, to me, when you have a student or somebody you've worked with before who says, Akeem, if it wasn't for you, or Chris, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have achieved this. That probably gives me a bigger buzz than anything else, because you think I've actually affected something, even sometimes where you didn't know about it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You in fact, I spoke to a chap the other day who was a master trainer, and I met him at a conference in Amsterdam in 2013, and he asked me to do a video testimony of him, and I'd forgotten all about that, and he reminded me yesterday when he called me, and I was like, whoa, that was like nearly 10 years ago. I've forgotten about it. So but anyway, that's just how it is, isn't it? As long as you're not going looking for it, then it's fine, Well, the fine line between being a big head, arrogant, and actually being genuinely happy. Because lots of people talk about, oh well, it's all about the team, it's all about but they don't really. But they're just saying it. I know.
It sounds good, but I've got to say that. But then when you see the way they behave, you're thinking, no, it's all about you, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly.
Not about the team at all.
Exactly.
All right, so thank you, Chris. That has been an absolute pleasure. I know you were worried that we'd get it all in an hour, but we have.
We achieved.
But it's been engaging, it's been informative, and I think it'll be very helpful to the people who then watch this or listen to it, however they take their podcast